Hey everyone, Max here, and today I would like to talk to you about the hot topic on DCS forum regarding the flight control of just released F-4 by HeatBlur. Most of the complaints are coming from people who's using spring-loaded joysticks, and I totally agree with them. For feedback implementation, I think it's quite good, and even if we can argue about the total range of authorities of pitch trim and total dampening of the flight control system itself, it's all of a matter of fine-tuning in FFB software. And my FFB software, I can easily dial everything to the point it will match a real aircraft quite well. Overall, HeatBlur have done a great job of highlighting key features of the flight control system behavior, even if it was a side effect of artificial field system engineering. Normally, Eagle Dynamic doesn't have enough man-hours to cover in all details force feedback implementation in theirs models, but I've got a feeling it's gonna be changing soon due to more hardware solution coming to the market. Before I show you what HeatBlur did terribly wrong with their implementation of flight controls for regular spring-loaded joystick, we just have to take a moment and look at schematic of flight control system itself. Here it is, pitch channel with artificial field implementation. It took me a while to get a proper realization of what is going on here. This manual could be found online, and some documentary on YouTube may help to clarify some things. As HeatBlur mentioned on forum, they've got an assumption of system work based on schematic as well, and I think it was this one. Let's start from the basics. Stabilator does have an irreversible booster, which means by set of rods and cables you can move it, but force applied to stabilator can cause no movement of your stick in the cockpit. That means that the pilot, judging by the resistance of the stick only, have no idea how strong is airflow or how far stabilator is deflected. So, to prevent pilot of hurting himself or aircraft, some loads are required. For the ailerons, engineers just used a simple spring cartridge. For the pitch channel, they wanted to give pilots more precise control, and thus more informative feedback is required. Well, they have put it a spring again, but the tension of the spring was variable. They put this cylinder called bellows here in such a way that airflow coming through the tube installed on the vertical fin will put some force on the piston, which will move it to the left. Through the assembly of trim actuator, which is worm gear, it will pull the spring, stretching it out and increasing central load. If I understand that correctly, the fact that the spring cartridge is not perfectly aligned with the pivot point of this belt crank allows trim activation to move stick load center position by balancing out bob weights and extra stretch they cause. Actually, for better understanding in very detailed way, it's better to have physical model or the entire system itself. Because some points like total range of possible trimming and thus possible free travel of stick under the gravity of bob weights are unclear, and so simulation stays questionable, at least for me. Speaking of system load in general, it should be usable throughout the whole flight speed envelope, which means we need to establish the max possible spring tension, keeping in mind that the pilot should be able to handle it. At the same time, due to wide range of flight speeds and the high deflection required at the supersonic speeds due to aerodynamic focus shifting with the reasonable max tension, we will get a very light control loads at low speeds, which is actually the case for F-4. Because of it, and to give a pilot a more precise control during the high G maneuvers, bob weights has been installed. From the documentary, we can learn that the subsonic speeds are most of the load on the stick is caused by bob weights during maneuvering, and it's vice versa for the supersonic. Bob weights are installed in such a way that they cause stick to go forward, but it shouldn't go far because it will be stopped by the spring. From the documentary we can get some reference for this.
The longitudinal field system, like the other field systems, is separate from the basic linkage. It features bob weights, which simply increase the stick force as the G level increases. For example, when the stick is pulled back, creating positive G's, the bob weights get heavier, making it harder to pull more G's. Some F-4s have 5-pound bob weights, and some have 3-pounders. When the 5-pound bob weights are raised by moving the stick aft and then released, the stick will go forward at least to neutral. The 3-pounders may not overcome acceptable friction and the stick may not move forward.
But we don't know to what position pitch trim is set on this video, so even I think that HeatBlur is lacking some self-friction in pitch system simulation, we will assume that they've done proper digging and will roll along with the idea that the simulation is correct. Alright, let's get back to the sim. And this is what HeatBlur did. When you are using non-feedback joystick, you don't have any control of the stick itself at all. It's like you are having a flight control emergency because you can't touch your stick. And you are removing floor panels in the cockpit and reaching out to grab somewhere here around the spring cartridge. And from now on, you are trying to fly aircraft just adding or removing some extra tension to the spring. You can affect your flight stick only indirectly through the spring cartridge. When you're pulling your physical joystick out of the center, green diamond on the diagram at the lower left corner of the screen, it moves down and you feel this displacement by stretching out spring in your joystick. This load is only what matters and not the displacement at all, because comparable load is added to the spring cartridge, what causes stick to get out of trimmed or balanced position. That means you don't have any direct correlation between your joystick travel and the fly stick movement. The ratio could be as low as 1:2 or as high or even higher than, let's say, 5:1. The balanced trim position is a function of spring stretching caused by bellows inflating by airflow, trim actuator position, and bob weight. On the ground, when there is no force coming out of the bellows, we can cause stick movement by moving trim actuator. If you choose a hot start, you will have your jet trimmed on the ground for about 2.5 points nose down. That means that the whole assembly moved right, and under the weight of bob weight, stick fell all the way forward. Remember, you as a pilot, in opinion of HeatBlur, don't have any direct control of the flight stick. Emergency, I told you before. Let's start to gradually trim the aircraft back or nose up. At first, nothing happens. It's because we are moving trim assembly to the left, but stick won't move because we're stretching out the spring first, and when the spring load is high enough, it will make bob weights and stick move. And yet again, where is the pilot? Why he is not holding a stick? Because forces at this point are negligible. Let's say if I'm sitting on the ground in the cockpit of T6 Texan, this aircraft doesn't have a counterweight of the elevator, that means stick wants to fall forward, but I'm not letting it go, at least if I don't need it there for turns during taxi, and it costs zero effort to do so. Finally, when tension is enough, stick is getting out of its position. But look at the way how the stick moves. It's like a spring pendulum or spring mass system, I remember it from school physics classes. Where is friction? Total system friction and dampening caused by cables tension, mass of elements, and even stickiness of grease. And I'm not even talking about pilot hand-on control, because he's probably praying right now before such a flight. Just imagine, we are talking about the pretty big set of rods, bell cranks, and cables from cockpit to the aircraft tail. All of this has a moment of inertia. And all of this doesn't have a special assist booster, like we have in a fuel system, which uses the fuel pressure to reduce the amount of force required to move throttles.
When the 5-pound bob weights are raised by moving the stick aft and then released, the stick will go forward at least to neutral. The 3-pounders may not overcome acceptable friction and the stick may not move forward.
Okay, if we go ahead and continue to trim nose up, we will see that the stick falls all the way back. For me, it's not very clear how can we get there by using only trim actuator. From system schematic, I can see that max trim back position couldn't be any further than the bell crank position, that way that there is a straight line between a pivot point here and rod attachment point, depends on how it's implemented in the physical system. If any further movement of the assembly to the left persists due to trim actuation or caused by increased airflow pressure inside the bellows, it will only cause increasing center and spring load. Looking at schematics, I believe that trim range authority is not very wide, and it could be confirmed by the flight testing inside DCS. Stick position, and thus a stabilator position depicted as an orange diamond on the diagram of flight controls, required for the horizontal flight with the speeds from 200 knots up to high subsonic speeds, lays in the range of about 12 to 25% of nose down position. And even for stable stall position, it's around neutral. Which is really strange for me is that HeatBlur's F-4 requires just a very small elevator position adjustment for the high supersonic flight. Normally it has to be trimmed a lot due to aerodynamic center shifting. Basically, aircraft doesn't need much of trimming stick position wise, so with proper implementation of joystick, aircraft is a joy to fly. In real aircraft though, you will need to make some trim adjustments, but mostly not because you are changing stabilator and thus a stick position, but because of the side effect of artificial fill system engineering. In most of the real aircrafts, if you are accelerating, effectiveness of your elevator increases, which causes aircraft to pitch up. In F4, it is more pronounced because increasing airspeed through the bellows will pull the spring causing the stabilator to move for pitch up. But from pilot perspective, it makes no difference, because he needs to trim down as in any other aircraft during the acceleration. Okay, let's go offline because it's going to be much more fun, I promise you. Let's start our takeoff roll by applying some thrust. I will trim the aircraft to about neutral position by trim indicator. Once aircraft is picking up some speed, you can see stick falls forward again. On schematic, we can see that it happens because bell crank, under tension of spring, which caused by bellows action, now pulled out of its down position. I still don't get how it got there in the first place, and the only trim actuator movement. By maybe just a stick weight itself, but not very obvious. And now again, tension caused by bellows with the initial airflow is just not enough to overcome the whole weight of bob weights, and stick falls forward again. And yet again, where is this guy? What is he doing in the cockpit? He's unable just to keep stick straight? Loads are negligible at this moment. I don't know, maybe around half a pound? I'm wondering, how did he manage to pass his medical exam? Seems like a decent guy, has no vitamin or mineral deficiency judging by the hair growth. Alright, just have a look what is going on now. Every single bump on the runway makes flight stick jump. Oh, that dude again in the cockpit, is he dead already? Just imagine Eagle Dynamic decided to go the same way, but not to proving you with such effects from butt kicker or force feedback devices, but decoupling you from your flight control, which you are currently holding in your hand. And now you are taking off from gravel or grass airfield in your P-47 with your stick jumping all over the cockpit because of bumps. It's a quite challenging experience, I would say. There are so many things to feel on the control of the real aircraft, like elevator weight, prop wash, backwards airflow, aerodynamic center shifting during, let's say, snap rolls, but nothing of that decouples you from flight controls. All these feelings could be implemented only through the force feedback interface. Alright, we continue our takeoff. As you can see by the green diamond, my joystick was staying perfectly still in the center. But remember how many interesting things did happen to control stick? Let's get rid of this radar. I'm not wearing my lead pants today, and also we will switch off this stub OG system. Remembering you, it doesn't have any effect on the flight stick at all.
This electro-hydraulic system does only one thing. It senses airplane motion, then attempts to stop that motion by putting in small opposite control surface movements without moving the stick or rudder pedals. The stab OG does not steer the aircraft or remove steady-state maneuvers, but attempts to counter airplane motion. In this way, it augments the normal stability of the airplane and smooths out a bumpy ride.
Let's do some maneuvering. While we're doing it, please pay attention how the flight stick behaves. Now you're probably also remembering your physics classics with spring mass system. Just compare it to the green diamond which represents my joystick position. It is absolutely disgusting. The way I'm seeing it, it's like HeatBlur decided to do everything by the book, and I really appreciate their hard work by implementing fuel, electric and other systems. I was so excited and thrilled by the trailers that I went through the flight manual of this aircraft, basically trying to get a new type rating in a few days. But honestly, they completely messed up with the flight control system for non-feedback joystick. It's like this tricky question, why the horse moving while pulling the sleigh? As we know, by Newton's law, the sleigh will pull the horse back with the same force. Or the airplane in the conveyor belt? The key to this question, it really matters where forces are applied. And you have carefully determine what is cause and what is consequences. Unfortunately, it happens a lot when people who do coding have final authority over the people who actually flying. Just remember the extreme runaways of Boeing 737 MAX. I'm really sorry to hear that HeatBlur refuses to accept that they mixed some things up. With all of this being said, I'm grounding my Phantom by HeatBlur. Thank you very much for watching. You have a great one. Bye.